All right. Welcome back to the How to Relate podcast.
What's going on, Brittani? How are you?
I'm good. It's Friday. It's been a week. Feels like a fast week, fast and slow at the same time.
I definitely think the weather has something to do with it. As far as like the number of delays, cancellations, that have happened this week because of the snow. We'll talk about flexibility later, but everybody has needed to rely on their flexibility.
Yeah. Because North Carolina doesn't know how to handle anything. If I want to write a letter to senators to be like, dear Senator, whoever,
Yeah.
this is how the North handles it. You all can figure it out. The 3 inches you got should not send the whole state into a panic the way it does, because that is heightening our nervous systems and sending all of us through a loop. And then we're stuck in our houses and we can't see people and remind us of the pandemic, and therefore it's a trauma response for everyone. So that's the letter that I want to send. It's a public
Yes.
health concern.
Right. Absolutely. And why am I looking at so much salt on the roads? I think why is the United States not using Colorado as an example right now?
What
Yeah,
do
I
they do in
guess like
Colorado?
so Colorado uses like this dirt and brine mixture. I will also say like their weed tax goes to paying for their roads. So like you will never find a pothole in Colorado, right? And their roads are magnificent. Um and I guess shout out all the weed smokers over there, but like they figured out, and they also figure out how the snow system that like their roads the salt isn't destroying their roads. Like in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, like you'll find a pothole every 2 feet, but in
Right.
Colorado, like it's not destroying the roads, but yet it's melting the salt. I mean, it's melting the snow, right?
Wow.
Yeah,
Interesting. I did not. Okay. I didn't know that there was another option.
that's why I'm like, why are stores selling salt? Number one, and number two, yeah, why are we just not looking at Colorado?
Huh. Fascinating. So maybe when I write to said
Yeah.
I'll add that in. Yeah. Eric
Right.
Ellis. On on top of everything else happening in the world, do this too. Thank you.
Yeah.
Oh man. So today we're talking about attachment.
Yeah. We were talking about attachment. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, when you asked me that, I was like, um, I have knowledge in a very niche area, and I'm just really looking forward to speaking with somebody who is an expert, especially working with adults and couples, versus I feel like I work a lot with like teens and young adults too. So it'll be really interesting kind of getting into the nitty gritty of like what direction we're going to go with that too.
Yeah. Well, because we talk about what's kind of interesting in when we're talking about any of these topics, we always take it back to childhood, but I
Yeah.
feel like there's a lot lacking in discussion and like discourse around what it means for kids and teens and developmentally attachment wise. We know the outcome when we're adults, but to actually understand it from an in real time developmental standpoint feels like that gets lost a little bit in the zeitgeist.
Yeah.
It's not as clickbaity to say, hey, this might be your kid's attachment style when this happens, because we're too busy going like, these are the red flags of an avoidant attachment style and please avoid them. Like that's more of the conversation.
Right. Yeah. Kind of focusing on like the symptoms rather than the total pathology too, that it doesn't have to be like as rigid when we're placing a label on somebody too.
Right. Because it's not meant to be a pathology. It's not a diagnosis. Attachment styles are not a diagnosis, but they're talked about like they are.
Yeah, absolutely. I will also say, I feel like a lot of people put a lot of pressure on, oh, well, what was your relationship with your mom and dad? Right. And yes, I would give credit, like your caregivers are people who show you how to navigate the world, specifically like emotionally. And that's where you learn how to build an attachment or a relationship with your emotions too. However, I still think that like, what about your relationship with your extended family? Like, what was it like your very first boyfriend, very first girlfriend? Did you stick with one big group of friends, like navigating throughout middle school, high school, making your first friends in college, right? As far as the relatability piece and your support system, like how we build relationships and those expectations and ideas in navigating certain social cues is still a big aspect as far as like the rules of attachment too.
Right. Yeah, that it's, your peers have a lot to do with it, your friend groups,
Yeah.
other, I'll say adults too, like, people talk about teachers or coaches being also figures that are stable, secure attachment figures, and I think this kinda goes with, the individualistic versus collective societies, so, very individualistic society, and I don't know that you get any more individualistic than the US of A. And, like, it's very much, insular, like, it's very that this is your nuclear family, this is your family of
Mm,
origin, how do the roots of your family, where is it tracked down to, like, those types of things, whereas I think in more collectivist societies, you even hear in, let's say, like, Indian cultures, people calling, like, auntie is, like, a second cousin's aunt, something like that, but they're seen as this is part of your community, this is part of your family, so there's I think in terms of attachment, it's, like, expected that it's not just parents. It's
yeah.
expected that it's more of a community-centered experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny that you also bring up culture too, because I feel like, especially in the United States, like we put a lot of pressure on moms, especially between the ages of like 0 and 10 for the kiddo, of like that you need to make sure that you're consistent 24/7, right? That there is no such thing as of mistakes and just the rigidity around the consistency too. And that if there is a mistake, then that's an open door for a potential wound too.
Yeah, it's like I think the idea of mom guilt is almost mom fear, that
Yeah.
I'm afraid that I'm going to do something that accidentally hurts my child, and therefore I already feel guilty for that potential hurt to happen, and that does kinda create a whole cycle in itself.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think before, I mean, before the pod, we were talking about this a little bit as far as like what creates attachment, right? Uh, or I know I've seen a couple moms have thinking like, okay, well, my role within the family of like nobody else is going to empty the dishwasher, nobody else is going to do the laundry, make dinner, and if I don't do those things, then the world is going to fall apart, or the system of our household is no longer going to function too, right? And also, like I need to care for my kids, I need to be quote unquote like a good mom, and then I sometimes follow up with the question of being like, what was the worst? What is a story that you guys tell about a family vacation? And usually it's not the, oh, well, this is the funnest time that we had. It's usually something that goes wrong, right? And those are, and collectively and relatability and experiencing that all together like brings a foundation together too. And those are the memories that like the kid goes to college and remembers like, well, my mom was a good mom, and I don't know, and then they'll tell a story about like something that went wrong on vacation too, right?
The family vacation stories do typically you kind of ask, "Was this fun for anyone?" Like, "Did anyone have
Yeah,
a good time?" But there is a lot of that for sure.
right.
It's sort of like holidays in the sense that there's all this pressure around
Yeah,
what this means, and we all need to be having fun, and we're having fun, right? Like, I think there is a little bit of that, and once you start putting the pressure on it, it automatically becomes not so fun. So,
yeah,
it automatically becomes that anything that it does go wrong feels even more catastrophic. Um, the fight that does happen between the siblings feels even bigger because it's like, this isn't supposed to be happening.
yeah,
You're not in your rooms fighting over who's getting the remote or the bathroom at that time. Like it's like you're not this isn't supposed to be how it goes.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, we traveled this way, we took time off,
Mhm.
we put all this money, we put on all this effort to making sure that you guys are having fun right now too.
So what can you tell us about teens and attachment? What are you seeing?
Yeah, so I guess the first part is as far as like the role of social media. Um, and I will say I don't want to be one of those guys that is saying like, oh, we need to extinguish social media and just blast into the sun, right? I do think it's possible to have social media, but kind of reconfigure the relationship that you have with social media, of rather than just being an investigator about people like view it as more of this is a source of expression, how other people are expressing themselves in connectivity too, right? That um, I noticed. So, just for example, um, if people are like Snapchat is kind of like ruling the roost is kind of like the most popular social media for teens right now, I feel. And I'll continuously have teens say like, well, I check their snap score and then a couple hours later I noticed that it had increased. And I don't know what him or her are snapping right now, or their best friends had changed, or if they're on Instagram and they have like and they get deleted from the private story or anything of that nature, right? And even with TikTok, like what the underlying like repost is, or kind of like I guess I want to say back in our day, like a subtweet, right? Like a how do I put this? A like a repost that an indirect repost about an ex is pretty pretty similar to a subtweet that we would experience too. But I guess I say all that to say is what are the actions that you are engaging in that's kind of like keeping you in that anxious attachment too? As far as like, is that a theme that kind of cultivates like unconditional love when you're continuously seeing like, oh, well, they haven't opened up my Snapchat yet. You know what I mean? Um, and no, not necessarily if you're um, timing responses based on like of saying like, well, this is a condition of mine right now, or I know that he or her responds like quickly, so then therefore they must be into me too, right? Like it seems like there's, I guess, within dating and even within friendships too, of being like, okay, I know I'm in good graces with them because how quickly they respond or how quickly they open up my text messages and things like that. That would be and like I said before, the relationship that you have with social media, I feel like that is kind of feeding into the anxious attachment.
Yeah, because you can be accessible whenever. So if
Yeah.
you're accessible all the time and you're not accessible to me in the next 5 hours, then the story I'm telling myself is that you don't like me, you're upset,
Right.
you're not into me. I did something wrong. It could be there's a million stories that could be going on in someone's mind, but this kind of expectation that everyone's attached to their phones gets reinforced and
Yeah.
increases the anxiety in what the relational dynamic is.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then I feel like we'll say frequently of being like, oh, well, you should just be on your phone less. But um I feel like with the removal of the phone, sometimes I don't know, sometimes it is like a pacifier for a lot of people, right? Um, but then we're cutting off like total communication too, because sometimes their phone is also a big part of their world too, as far as like being able to give them access. So the goal ultimately is of, okay, how do I build a safety net and kind of and a theme of well, whether they respond right away or whether they don't respond right away, I know that I'm going to be okay. Um, right. And sometimes I also feel like that they develop themes too of, yeah, I'm going through a breakup, but I do have a great group of friends right now too.
Damn both.
Yes,
Two
exactly.
things can coexist.
Right.
I was just thinking about so we're not going to get into this because we've discussed that this has been overdone, but in terms
Yeah.
of attachment styles, so just to say them, they're anxious, avoidant, secure, disorganized. Okay. One of the markers of a secure attachment style is having a healthy sense of self-esteem.
Yeah.
And like with teenagers, especially, they're trying to figure out themselves. This is
Yeah.
the developmental phase that they're in. So them liking themselves it can be hit or miss depending on the day because they're going to be
Yeah.
relating to their peers and that might be determining their sense of self or how they feel about themselves in that moment or in that day. So
100%.
to have like a cell phone and to see that your friend is now hanging out with this other friend without you because they posted on social media and
Yeah.
feel left out, it makes sense. It's like yeah, you're trying to figure out your sense of self and how you can like you when it's like, oh my gosh, do they not like me? Do they want to hang out without me? Am
Yeah.
I better? Fine. I don't want to be friends with them anyway. Like it just becomes like there's a whole story that impacts how I feel about me,
Yeah. Yeah.
relationships.
Man, and one really good example, and it's really been, I think of it because it's been a theme these past couple of weeks, is finding roommates on social media of that people will join like okay, NC State just came out. The decision just came out. So they'll go to the page and they'll look through the following list, right? And they'll follow a bunch of people and then they'll DM and say like, "Hey, have you found a roommate yet?" Or like, "Hey, like what are you majoring in?" And they'll start up with small talk and then it will just like build from there, right? And if it clicks, they'll be like, "Okay, you want to try to room together too, right?" Um,
Mhm.
and you're able to build familiarity, right? And you're using that access it as a tool. And even if you don't room with them, you also still have a friend, right? So
Right.
I think it doesn't have to be like super alienating of it being like, well, we didn't click as a potential roommate, so therefore, what am I have no use of that relationship, and that's not really necessarily always the case.
Yeah. The disposability
Yeah,
of relationships. So I think what's I'm gonna yes, because I think that what the internet has done is created this idea that there's an abundance of people out there that you could be in a relationship with, and they have
mhm,
100,000 followers. And look, you know who they are, but they have no idea who you are. But you could be friends with them because you love their content. Like, and I
yeah,
think that when it comes to real life and our interpersonal dynamics, it's like actually there's not an abundance of people out there. Like there are people that you can have at in like kind of this example. If you're going to NC State, you have your NC State campus.
yeah,
Or that already narrows it down because it's a location, it's a school, and then you're going to find a roommate and it's okay, who do I feel like I can vibe with? Who do I feel like that I might be able to deal with some of their quirks
right,
and
yeah,
some of the
yeah,
messiness or in some of the negotiations we're gonna have to make. Like it's and if it doesn't work out, it doesn't mean that this person is bad and I can just discard of it, but
yeah.
of them. But that we can maybe be okay, we might not be roommates, but maybe we can be coffee friends. Maybe we can be friends just because
Right.
we have the same class together. Or and not everyone has to be friends, but it can be that it's how do I want to start making connections with people that doesn't depend on me seeing their Snapchat followers?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and then especially when you, I don't know, talk about building a framework in a hierarchy, building a framework in their mind and in a hierarchy. And I say, okay, if you're picturing like cream of the crop roommate, who's at the top? Who's at the top of the hierarchy? And if they are saying like, well, they can't have a boyfriend or girlfriend because I don't want them staying over in our dorm, or they have to have a high Snapchat score, or any other like any green flags that they might have as far as like kind of going back to the idea of attachment of it being like, I have these hard green flags that they have to obtain. Like that's very polarizing. And then you come to find out that you have nobody, it's June and you have nobody to room with because of your polarizing expectations.
Right. This is so apropos to dating. I can't help but to bring it up. Cannot help but to bring it up. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is very apropos because again, it's how are my high standards impacting my ability to be in relationship with someone? And
Yeah.
if my standards are so high, then I'm either the college roommate left with no options by the time June hits, or I'm the single person who's looking at all my friends and going to one more wedding alone and it sucks again. And
Yeah.
that person who I said they had a bit of an ick and then I went on a date with 6 months ago,
Yeah.
they could have been great at this wedding, but instead I said I didn't like their shoes, so I moved on.
For sure. And I think, especially when I don't know, I use the word hierarchy a lot in my sessions of that there's a person at the top and then there's a group below them and then there's a group below that. And it kind of looks like a pyramid, of course. And then how they see themselves, especially as a teenager, like you said, man, that's gonna jump based on like the levels that they're experiencing that day. One day they might be at the top because their Snapchat score might be high, their boyfriend or girlfriend is responding immediately, or yeah, their self-esteem might be really high that day. But then a couple weeks later, you got deferred by Vanderbilt, or well, you got accepted by NC State, but their business school kind of little hesitant to accept you too, right? So then you get knocked down a peg, and that's based on like how you're viewing yourself and how you're viewing the world. That if you feel like that, if your sense of accomplishments and how you're viewing other people, then that's also increments of like how you're viewing yourself, and then you're gonna go from the top of the hierarchy all the way down to the bottom. But as a therapist, I kind of struggle with it too, of being like, well, we all have judgments, right? So it's impossible to say like, okay, well, why don't you just like dismantle this hierarchy and then just have everybody at one playing field?
When you say hierarchy, are you talking about a social hierarchy? Like I have my in circle and then I have my like I'll call it my brunch friends, or I have my friends that I study with, but they're not my in friends. Like, is that the kind of hierarchy that you're talking about?
Yeah. Um, similar similar to that of brunch friends, or even just like how they're viewing other people too. Of you see another person and you have a quick 5-minute chat, and then you'll put them in this hierarchy.
Status. So there's
Status.
status.
Yes, that's a good word for it. Status.
What are some status symbols that the youth are looking for?
Mm. Let me think about this real quick.
It sounds like followers is one.
I
I
would say, yeah, I would say number of followers, where you're going to school, money. Money is a big one now. I mean, now you can go anywhere and make like 15 bucks an hour, but especially that I have a couple patients of like this, that have developed a mindset of like, well, I just need to grind. And then eventually, and grinding is eventually going to, equal freedom and autonomy. And then I can worry about getting into a relationship. But let's say a freedom and autonomy doesn't come until like Erickson's stages of development, like maybe mid 40s, right? And then you're going to look around and you're gonna be like, well, this availability isn't as great as I thought it was going to be, as far as like seeking a partner too, right? And your pool is going to be a little bit smaller, right? Not saying that's super bad, but there's going to have to be a level of acceptance that you're going to have to deal with that too, right?
Right. Are the standards that you have for yourself so high that you're actually blocking yourself from any sort of intimacy in relationships? And then you keep kicking the can down the road of I'll be ready when I'm
Yeah,
successful. But that successful mark moves 10 feet further every single time you achieve it. And
yeah,
then but it can be that it's a reflection of when do I feel good in myself? When do I feel good enough to see myself as valuable, to see myself and I think that
yeah,
status is a way that is a quantifiable mark, especially when it comes to things like money or your job title or the house that you live in. Like these are very tangible
for
things,
sure.
but that doesn't mean that it's going to internally help someone feel that secure sense of self esteem
Yeah,
to then be able to be in a secure enough relationship with
yeah,
either friends, because I think that, Arthur Brooks has this great saying, "You have your real friends and your deal friends." So, your real friends are gonna be there for you, whether you have the status or not, and your deal friends are only gonna be there for you and have the status.
yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
One one aspect that I'm really surprised about is where people go to school. I think that especially in like the triangle of that with Wake Tech, it has become so it's like busting at the seams. It's become so much more popular of being like, well, I'm going to go to community college for 2 years, and then I'm going to transition to a 4-year university too. That I don't know. Maybe this is of course, it's my own bias being originally a northerner and coming down, but like for people who went to a community college, like there was a lot of judgment there of like where I went to high school in the surrounding areas in Pennsylvania. But now it seems that, oh, you're going to Wake Tech? Cool, man. Like, good luck. Let me know what classes you're taking too. Right. And I think a good program. And it's surprising to see like how much that has changed. And I do think that that has changed, that's challenged a lot of opinions. And even for the older generation, I feel like it's, and parents of being like, well, I don't really know. Like, what if taking classes at Wake Tech is eventually going to lead to a gap here? And I feel like it's kind of dismantling that stigma now.
That Yeah, I forget where this stat came from, but the price of college has increased by 200% over the last, like,
Yeah.
30 years, and it's
Yeah.
the only kinda debt that you can't get rid of. So I think that right now, and so there's this sort of interesting, kind of phenomenon that's happening right now where people are looking at either top universities or they're looking at, like, community colleges.
Yeah.
The mid-tier universities are starting to, like, I mean, I know colleges that have closed because they're, like, not having enough
Yeah.
enrollment. So, I think that there is go and talk about that status part, is that the Harvard, Yales, Ivy Leagues are having, more demand
Yeah.
because companies are swinging back around to looking at the Ivies as a place for employment. Whereas before, and I think with DEI and things like that, because that is now being dismantled,
Yeah.
it's that now they're seeking status instead of seeking how do we provide greater opportunities for everyone. But the problem is that it depends on your parents' income on where you go. So it's like, sure, you can look at Ivies, but I think that people are kind of looking at the college experience as, is it worth the price?
Right.
Is drinking in a frat basement really worth the 20 grand a semester? Like, it's like, I
Yeah.
don't know.
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think, it's an interesting thought too, because when we think about attachment in the community, and
Mhm.
these are the things that people see, and it's like, well, if people see this aspect, right? If people see where I'm going to school, people see how much money I make, what kind of
Yeah.
car I drive, then
Yeah.
that gives them a perception of who I am. And
Yeah.
do I want to be accepted by the what I deem as the in group? So then I'm going to act in accordance to what I think the in group wants me to be.
For sure. Yeah. Kind of going into this theory of like, well, what can I offer? What can I offer my next friendship or next relationship to? Right.
Mhm.
Of I have to potentially like prove my love or prove to my partner that I am lovable and that I am that I'm worthy of their love too. Right.
Yeah.
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 And I think when we develop that narrative, we kind of extinguished even the possibility of uh unconditional love too.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And that unconditional love, I think, also stems within too, because if the idea is that I'm only lovable when, then that's a really
Yeah.
hard standard to have for oneself. And the tricky thing is that I think when you see someone being successful, the idea of like, oh yeah, I have self-esteem. Look, I'm a CFO of a company. Or
Yeah.
look, I'm going to school for XYZ. Look at me, right? It looks like I can even circumvent the ideas I have of myself and say, yeah, of course I have self-esteem. This is what I'm doing. And then but I'm constantly feeling like I'm chasing success, then
Yeah.
you're trying to overcome the idea of being a failure. So there is a binary that is underneath of that that can be helpful to look at. And again, if we're going back to like what creates base secure attachments and
Yeah.
liking yourself to have a sense of belonging that is true and like very like unique and intimate with other people, that
Yeah.
it's a core foundation.
Yeah. Absolutely. I know we talked about last time I was on with CrossFit that CrossFit is something is like a good community. I know we were also talking about self-determination. One thing I was actually talking about with a patient today, and especially kind of like what you were talking about as far as like developing a core foundation is Dungeons and Dragons. I know I use examples all the time, but yeah, that is, and that is a really good aspect for, I have found for the avoidant attachment. And I shouldn't say like that's not a blanket statement that like, oh, if you play D and D and you're, oh, have avoidant attachment, that's going to fix you. But I am noticing that more people are inclined because there's not a lot of judgment. And there's also rules. I don't know if you ever played D&D. I've actually never played it.
No,
I'll be
I thought it
honest.
was a video game for the longest time, and then someone had to be like,
Really?
"Not a video game," and I found that out how old was I when I found that out? Like 6 days ago? No,
Yeah.
maybe 6 months ago. It might have been
Yeah.
6 months ago, but yeah,
Yeah. But like especially with like developing characters, like using art school, like your art like artistry skills and things like that too. That I don't know, they got it right basically of being like that this is a accepting group of people who highlights skills of other people, and there's celebrations and like of winning, and there's a healthy sense of competition too. I don't even know if it is a competition or not, but like there's a sense of camaraderie too. But whatever D&D is doing, they got to keep doing it.
it's true. I think they created an analog version too that people have been craving. So
Uh,
kind of to this too. And I don't know exactly what studies have been done around this, but how reading fiction increases empathy because you're in a character that's not yourself. And so you're feeling what they're feeling. And I think because you're reading it, you're with it more, you're with it longer,
yeah,
your imagination's putting you in the story. So I think that that's an interesting kind of like analogy to the Dungeons and Dragons too. When you're in a character and you're developing that empathy skill, then you're more likely to say like, "Oh yeah, I can develop that skill because I know this here and I feel
yeah,
that and I can translate that over to my other relationships or my in real life parts."
yeah, absolutely. And especially like in real life, like I don't know, in the education system, that school does a poor job about celebrating creativity at times, right? Because just based on yeah, rigidity, and we don't have to get into that whole aspect. But Dungeons and Dragons is something that like if you develop a skill in that, that's something that like really is a segue and camaraderie, and it normalizes it too, and it celebrates it too. So people are looking forward to like, man, I can't wait to bring that part out of me too. Speaking of parts, I'm also going to shout you out, and I guess we can kind of transition real quick. Of you wrote a newsletter a couple weeks ago. Oh,
Yeah.
remind me again, what was it called? This is embarrassing.
Was it Dear Peter?
Dear
Dear
Peter, and you
Yeah.
had talked about the neediness, and that was one aspect that you had said. And another aspect that kind of relates to attachment is bringing certain parts out of people that we typically suppress. Or finding friends, a significant other, a group of people that bring parts of ourselves out that we might have judgment towards, or that might be associated with our inner child and things like that. I had forgotten about that. And I think that's also a really important piece, and kind of relating back to the Dungeon and Dragons of like people finding this world and being like, oh, I can be myself. Like I can feel like I'm 6 years old again.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, bringing out that the childlike self that can be playful and silly freely. And
Yeah.
as adults, we don't do that. We are very caught in our own rigidity and judgments, particularly of ourselves. And I
Yeah.
think that it's can we bring some of that? How can we move some of that out of the way? And what are some avenues that help do that? And Dungeons and Dragons, fantasy worlds, I think help
Yeah.
foster those ways that we can bring those out in ourselves.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I guess going back to the original question you had asked me a while ago is what are the markers that people are using right now? And I feel like creativity is unfortunately not one of those markers. Yeah.
Markers for
Uh, when you had asked about like the
yeah,
status of the team.
yeah, which is unfortunate. Um, I think creativity is one of those things that people appreciate from a distance, but are afraid to engage in themselves. When people
Yeah.
see others being creative, it's like, oh, I envy them.
Yeah.
I don't see that inside of me. And creativity is in everyone. You can use your imagination. You can, I mean, there's so many ways that we can all be creative. And I
Yeah.
think tapping into those skills would actually help make better relationships.
Yeah. So as a therapist, I This is kind of embarrassing, but I was not allowed to play video games growing up because my parents wanted to like expedite my creativity to the fullest length, right?
Okay.
And so I was like, I had played like a couple of sports games and I was on the computer at various times, but I didn't know what I had never used a like video game console until the Wii came out, and I think it was like uh, a junior in high school. And I greatly appreciate my parents doing it, but also it did have a cost. And it actually still is costing me at 34 years old when I have a patient being like, "Oh, did you see the most recent release of COD?" And I'm sitting over here, I'm like, "Brother, like I played an Xbox maybe 5 to 6 times in my life, right?" Um, so it's interesting, even as I guess for parents raising their kids of like what they attempt to do of trying to create having a creative outlet too.
We definitely grew up in an era that was, I think, a lot of fear based around the internet and video games and screens. Like, I feel
Yeah.
like there was this cautionary tale that was circling around that parents were like, "Oh, video games? I don't know about that."
Yeah.
And we're like, "Video games? That's like the least of your worries."
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Right.
least of your concerns now. Yeah,
Yeah.
mhm, that's
Yeah.
true. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
creativity.
So yeah, I know you had asked about the aspect with teens. How do you feel like that attachment within relationships and what are you seeing in couples? And even we could talk a little bit about like how wives see their husband's emotions or their partner's emotions and vice versa too.
Because you just referenced it. So the article that I wrote two. So one was Dear Peter in reference to Peter Pan, and one was Dear
Yeah.
Mom. So, and I was thinking about this and how I think in dating and in couples, men and women are seeing each other. So I think that and you can see this in both research, but I think in the cultural zeitgeist and how it's talked about online amongst friends, in comedy sketches, especially too, that you feel the elements of truth to this. So I think about women feeling like they're the ones holding it all together. And
Mm,
when I think about the Wendy archetypes, she's often it's like the mom who is afraid that her son is rotting away playing video games and he's not sure what to do with his life and he's 23 and she feels like, oh my gosh, I must have failed as a parent because he's
mm,
not launching. It's the sister who's like, hey, my brother is like maybe like using drugs and things, and I'm not sure what to do with that, but I feel very responsible for him. It's the
mhm.
wife who's going, he always wants to go away with the guys or on the weekends, or he's constantly like chasing money and success. And I just would like us to feel at peace at some point. Like, so I think that there are these different kind of archetypes where I feel like I have to be the one that holds down the fort
Yeah.
and kind of be the hammer, and I don't want to be. I'm
Yeah.
the one reminding us that this is real life. And when I think about Wendy, like the character of Wendy, darling, in the movies and the stories, is that she's the one who actually invented Peter. Like she invented him through her mind. Like it was like a story that
Mhm.
the family had all together, but she was the one who was trying to keep him alive because she saw herself maturing and starting to see adulthood kind of in the near future. And so
Yeah.
for her, it was like, I am looking for that sense of adventure. I'm looking for the sense of play and like that sense of freedom. And then the story of Peter, Peter's character. And when I think of Peter as a lost boy, who are now, I
Mhm.
think, lost adults, and I've talked about the lost boys research and how this looks, but I think about this with men who are in their 30s and kind of like we were just talking about chasing success.
Yeah.
Constantly chasing money. I'm constantly like I'm on that grind and like maybe I'll be ready to settle down when. Maybe I'll be able to get my pilot's license because that's something I really want to do. For some reason, getting a pilot's license seems to be like a thing right now. I don't know why.
Yeah.
It's like a thing. Maybe it is like the guy who's like in his mid 20s and is lost and like I don't know what I want to do with my life and
Yeah.
feeling like I have no direction. And then, or like the guy who I like to kind of say on dating apps, and it's like, not sure if I want kids, figure out my dating goals. I'm 39. No, not sure.
Yeah.
Like really feeling not grounded. And so,
Right.
but that it's like, but the idea of I have so much independence and so much freedom that it's actually leading me to nowhere. Like there's so many options and I just like keeping my options open. I don't want to be tied down, but there's a part of me that does want that sense of security. So it's like that sense of like security and exploration that we all have. And
Yeah.
but we're seeing this in people. It's like one represents security, one represents adventure, one feels like, but I have to keep reminding you of all your responsibilities. And the other one's like, why don't you want to have fun anymore? Like, and so I think
Yeah.
that, but at some point, those were the exact qualities that drew people to one another, that drew
Yeah.
a couple together. And now
Yeah.
these are the exact qualities that are drawing you apart.
And that is so interesting of what you just said of security and exploration and the aspect of like graduating college and like your world is open, right? As far as what jobs you're going to enter and things like that. But then I think people look at this aspect of like, whoa, what do you mean I got to work from like 9 to 5 every single day? Like this seems that I have to grieve. Number one, I can't see my friends. I can't see my friends every day, right? And so is a part of me going to die along with that? Is my sense of exploration going to die if it means that I have to sacrifice my relationships right now too, right? And also my time. Like you mean to tell me that maybe through my mid 20s, through my mid 60s, that all I'm going to do is potentially work, and I just have to continue to sacrifice my time, and so then therefore, like the sense of uh, the sense of exploration feels really dim, and then there's this existential crisis that people go through of being like, well, then is life really worth living? Right. And a lot of people are saying like, wow, like, why are there so many dropouts of people who are seniors too? Right. And I feel like that is a case in point right there of being like, of the inability to let go of a certain part of themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. It's almost a grief that there's going to be this transition point, and the
Yeah.
grief part of, yeah, transitioning into adulthood is going to be hard and it's going to be
Yeah.
challenging, and that you will lose freedom. But I think that we conflate freedom with purpose, and that those two are actually at odds a lot of the time. Purpose does have constraints. It has structure. It has a meaning to it.
Yeah.
And when we just want freedom, but to what end? Like
Yeah.
at what point is it that the cost is almost too high because
Right.
it leads to almost nowhere. It's an unanchoring. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And usually typically that leads to I guess, a lot of avoidance too. Yeah.
For sure. And I think it's avoidance of a few things. I think it's avoidance of life circumstances, that is. To take it back, I think the story of Peter Pan's great. So to take it back, which I actually told a client to watch the movie Hook with Robin Williams. It was a family favorite growing up. So I've seen it at countless times, but I haven't seen it in a while. But Robin Williams' character is Peter Pan as an adult, and he forgot that he was Peter. But
Yeah.
there's this beginning scene, and his son, they're on the plane, and he's so afraid of flying, and his
Yeah.
son's like throwing a ball at the ceiling, and he's like, "What? When are you gonna grow up? When are you gonna stop being a child?" And his wife, I think, is Moira, and she like turns to him and she says, "Your kids just want to play with you. How long do you think this lasts? This
Yeah.
doesn't last forever." And
Yeah.
it's so harsh and so disconnected from his sense of childlike self that he's miserable. So it's interesting because you do have this character who it's like, oh, is that what I'm gonna be? Is that it? That looks like doom and gloom. Like that doesn't look
Yeah.
good. It looks
Yeah.
miserable to do that. So I'd rather not choose and choose adventure and freedom. And sure, I can go like work on a yacht somewhere. That sounds cool. Like
Yeah.
whatever for the time being, because it's like I'm avoiding being unhappy.
Yeah.
So, but I'm also avoiding not being happy by not choosing.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And then I think that's why, like, potentially even gap years are so popular now too. Of like, I'm choosing to not avoid it. I'm not ready to necessarily let go of that part of me too.
Yeah,
Uh,
I'm not ready to let go of this. I think about even people who were in fifth years, but
yeah.
in college. I
Yeah.
remember there was someone who was, I think he was 26 when I was at school, and I remember just going, dude, get over it. Like,
Yeah.
you're too old to be here. Move on.
Right.
There does come a time where you kind of look and you go, what is happening? What are you doing?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Another example I feel like that this comes into play as far as like the minimizing like freedom and opportunity is like, I don't know if you do premarital with couples, but I find that sometimes, especially with men that I work with, of being like, well, when I get married, I'm not going to have as much, I'm not going to have as much opportunity. Um, and and kind of like what you were saying before of being able to like have this playful inner child of like quote unquote like spending time with the boys, right? And it just feeling so limiting, and then eventually leads to like, well, what if I just don't make a decision, and I just continue to avoid making decisions in pursuit in strengthening our relationship too. And if I cease strengthen our relationship and I continue to engage in just hanging out with the boys, then ultimately I get the best of both worlds. That maybe I get a sense of security and I get the playfulness of being able to interact with my inner child too.
Hmm. Yeah. Do you feel like that men will take it as they're both are available to them? Or does it look like one impedes the other?
That one impedes the other.
One
Yeah.
impedes the other? Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And
Which
so
is
yeah,
interesting.
and then there's like a sense of like withdrawal too. And then there's this crisis of being like, well, how do I view, am I viewing my relationships different? Am I viewing my emotions differently? So then they're reviewing their wives' emotions differently. But then I also always say like our values change based on our stages of development too. And sometimes with age. And it's okay that taking into account like you can act and make decisions on your current values and still feel connected with your playful inner child, right? And I think that just takes a little bit of navigating too. But I think that's also that's constructing a realistic point of life.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That it is kind of dealing with life as it is, not how it constantly could be.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
I just watched the movie When Harry Met Sally for the first time. Have you seen this?
No.
Okay. Well, okay, watch it. It's on Do you have HBO?
Yeah, I do. I just
Okay,
got
it's on HBO. So definitely watch it because I think it's hilarious and it's very relevant to today's like dating world too.
yeah.
But Meg Ryan has this quote where she's like going on about her ex, and she said, we were at a dinner at a friend's house who have kids, and we're looking at how, the kids are running around and the parents are chasing them and they're constrained by bedtimes and all these things. And she said, and we looked at each other and said, man, how lucky are we that we get to just do what we want when we want. We get to just book that flight to Italy whenever we want to do it. We get to
Mm,
just have sex on the kitchen floor whenever we want to. We get
yeah.
to just go and do, lunch at the park on a Thursday if we wanted to do it. And then she said, do you know what we never did? She goes, we never did book that random flight to Italy. We never did have sex on the kitchen floor. And we never did do
Mm,
that random lunch in the park. We never did
yeah.
those things. It's the idea that I could, an idea that the option is there.
Yeah.
And that's the part that feels like I'm kind of
Mm,
chasing this illusion. I'm chasing an illusion that all the opportunities are available to me. And what if? What if that it was that there's other options available to you, even if you have a sense of a secure relationship?
yeah.
And because I do sometimes, I have a tendency to blame boomers. So I think that like boomer comedy was always like ball and chain, like, oh yeah, guys, I'm like, oh yeah, the old ball and chain, that kind
Yeah.
of vernacular. So that what, like the idea is that you're with someone who just you find boring and stiff, and but that's a relationship. That's
Right.
the expectation. And it's
Yeah.
really more like, or it's that you find someone who you're secure with and who
Yeah.
you enjoy being around. And that doesn't impede on who you are and you're becoming. But
Yeah.
there are going to be responsibilities that you do have because you are with someone. And
Yeah.
those responsibilities are greater than yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that's a really great way to put it of being like that it combines it all into one as far as like the looking at options internally versus external options of like, and I guess opportunities is what you said. of what are internal opportunities that I have within myself and also within my locus of control. And when people kind of like enter into like this anxious slash avoidant tendencies, I think people convince themselves either I have too many options, that it's too hard to pass up right now, or I have no options. I have no options. I'm never going to find a guy that's better than this.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think, and that's pretty much kind of exactly how it goes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, again, when we were talking about social media earlier, dating
Yeah.
apps lead to this idea that there's so many options. There's so many
Yeah.
options, but you actually don't. Like, the reason why people like to meet via friends is that there's been a curated process. There's been
Yeah.
a vetted relatability to this person that you
Definitely.
already are starting off of on a common foot, that you like hanging out with the same people, which has a lot of meaning to it. But this idea that it's like, oh, am I gonna pass that up because I might have another friend group somewhere that might have another friend? The idea that you're doing that
Yeah.
isn't as likely. But when we're on dating apps, it's like, oh, but I might find someone else who is 6'2" instead of
Yeah.
5'11". So it's I think that sense of security is actually looking at who's in front of you, what kind of like is actually committing to being interested.
Yeah.
So can you commit to being interested for 1 hour for a date?
Yeah.
And if that hour is mostly good, then can you commit to another hour for another date? So if you can start to feel inside of you that you do trust your instincts, you trust your judgment, you trust
Mm,
yourself, you like yourself, then it's how do I use that as my internal mechanism to then say that I want to spend more time with this person and can I commit to another date? You're committing to another date. You're not committing to a lifetime. It's taking it step by step and looking at it and going, oh, that means I'm going to have to deal with this person. I don't know.
yeah.
I'm going to deal with this person forever if I take this second date.
Right. Yeah. And I think that the absence of trust, of internal trust, and also the realization of being like, you're able to develop your own opinion. Like, who gives a, like, it, even if the potential date develops like an opinion about you, and I know we can go into like the ability to feel perceived and all that stuff, but like, you're able to solidify your opinion about that person too. And being able to build your own opinion about that is also, um, I know we were kind of talking about like, and I don't know, I don't want to go the standard route, but it gets away from the feelings of being like, oh, like, how are they perceiving me right now? And building opinions also like, creates trust within yourself too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, that you're assessing how you feel, and
Yeah.
how you feel, you can trust in your own feelings. That
Right.
yeah, and I think that we try to circumvent that by going like, "Is this a red flag?
Yeah.
Should I like this or should I not?" Like, it's like,
Yeah.
no should here, there's just how you feel and how you
Right.
experience this, and someone else is gonna experience this differently, and that doesn't mean that your experience is right, wrong, and doesn't mean
Definitely.
theirs is right or wrong, it just means that you experience this differently.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. That's very, counter, uh, counteractive to how society is going right now though, too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this is why I'm not getting followers on Instagram because I don't make 6 red flags you need to be looking for
Yeah.
type
Yeah.
content. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, man. Okay, any other notes on attachment that you want to hit on?
Mm. No, I think I'm good.
I think we nailed this.
Yeah, I think we nailed this too. I think we nailed it in a sense of it wasn't super, this is what you need. Secure attachment is something that you need to desire and build your life off of. But I think we covered how to internally and externally manipulate manipulate your mind and also manipulate your environment so that you're developing good tendencies rather than being like, oh well, if I'm not in this box, then therefore I'm failing.
Yeah, how to change a framework so that you feel more secure with life as it is so that you can create it for what you want it to be.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Well,
I like this. This was a fun one. So,
yeah.
appreciate it.
what would you say, I guess as far as teens and young adults go, I
Yes.
would say reestablishing your relationship with social media. I would say that would be a big aspect. Reestablishing your sense of unconditional love and what that looks like as far as like when you're approaching friendships, relationships, experiences with parents. And I really like what you had said as far as assessing who brings out certain parts of you, as far as parts that may or may not have been suppressed of like in cultivating like the silliness. Because I think like the silliness is a segue into creativity, and having a creative outlet is also probably goes under the umbrella what you were talking about as like the 9 basic needs in life too.
Yeah. If you can be silly with someone, it means you can feel at ease with them. So I think it's a
Definitely.
great marker. Yeah, I would say for adults, it's depathologizing this, that
Yeah.
if you have a tendency to pull away or if you have a tendency to feel anxious, whether you're in a relationship or you're dating or you have family dynamics where you might feel this in conflict, doesn't mean that you are anxious, avoidant, secure,
Yeah.
and trying to
Yeah.
fit yourself into a box, but more like that it's just getting into the nuances of what your experience is in the moment. Um, yeah, the
Yeah.
self-reflection piece.
Yeah. Gotcha. No, I think yeah, I think we nailed this.
Sweet. I think so too.
Gotcha.
All
Well,
right. And until next time, everyone, stay connected.
all right. Bye everyone.